How many people in the audience are actually fundraising CEOs or scientist entrepreneurs raising money? Okay, so this will be good. This is a book I wrote called the Life Science Executives Fundraising Manifesto. And pretty much what I'm talking about today is in this book. And if anybody asks me a question in the audience, I'll give them a free copy of the book. Yesterday afternoon was really quite exciting. In this room we had, was anybody at our conference yesterday, by the way? Okay, okay, great. So as you know, in this room yesterday we had 60 tables, and we had 550 early stage investors going across drugs, diagnostics, healthcare IT, and devices. So at each table, you would have an investor, and he or she would have a red ribbon that said investor on their badge. And so you knew exactly when you got into the table who the person was in front of you. And we're a company that has these databases, which I'll explain a little bit later. And so because we have our database and a profile of the investor, and if you went to our partnering and you downloaded the profile, you would really know who the investor was in front of you and what his mandate was and how much money he had and what his interests have. And just that little thing is very important, because a lot of times when you go to these conferences, you sign up and the profile that you see isn't complete. You have to go Google it. You don't know who the person is. And then finally, when you get to the other side of the table, for the first 15 minutes, you're trying to sell him. Is this guy trying to sell me? Is he a CRO and trying to get my money, or am I trying to sell him? Is he an investor? And you spend 15 minutes out of the first half an hour just trying to figure out who's trying to get whose money. And so part of the thing that we do at the conference we had yesterday is we really make sure that both groups fill out their profiles. We call it the buy side, which is the investors and the partners, and the sell side, which is the technology assets and the providers of that technology. So my company is Life Science Nation, and we have a database, which is an investor database, which is a global investor database that has about 5,000 global investors. So people who are buying our database are fundraising CEOs, and they're able to go into the database and say, here's what my product is, and here's what stage I am at, and press a button, and all of a sudden a list of global investors that are a fit for you will come up. And what's really interesting is it's 10 categories of investors. So it's venture capital, it's angels, it's private equity, it's hedge funds, it's corporate venture, it's endowments, foundations, family offices. So you get a really good look at the investor landscape for your particular silo that you're in, and you can really see cross-functionally all of the different types of investors. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. We also have another database, which we call the company database, and that has about 46,000 profiles. And if you are not in my database, you should get in it if you're an early stage technology provider, because a lot of the service providers and a lot of the large pharma companies buy my database to source technology. So we have this issue out there today, is that the big pharma companies, the big strategic partners, the biotechs that are looking to fill their pipelines are looking for early stage technologies, and it's global, so they need to be able to target who they're looking for so they can find you, and then you need to be in a database so that they can find you and you can engage them in a conversation. So those are the two databases that we have, and then we have some consulting services where we will help a fundraising CEO get their branding and their messaging together and kind of understand who their global target list is, and then help them with how they reach out to people via phone canvassing and emails, and teach them how to create an infrastructure using Salesforce.com. So if you find 500 investors that are a fit for you, you can't use a multicolored spreadsheet to keep track of them. It just simply won't work. You really need a CRM, and you can use a cloud-based CRM called Salesforce.com. It will really make your life easy, and you need that to really manage anything over 200 or 300 profiles of people that you're trying to engage with and create a dialogue with. As we said yesterday, we were here. and we had the whole hotel from the ground floor all the way up to the restaurant. We had 60 tables here and 30 tables upstairs, and so we had a total of 90 tables, and we had 1,400 meetings, and the meetings that we had were basically between qualified investors, and when I say qualified investors, we have a research team that has a dialogue with each of the investor that we call up, and because we have a database, we have to curate that database, which means curating their profiles. So when we talk to them, which is every 6 months or so, we're getting an update of exactly what their mandates look like. And when we go there, we're not, when people come to our conference, we're not letting iBanks come in as investors, and we're not letting lenders come in as investors, and debt people as investors, and consultants who tell you they have a Rolodex, and if you pay them $10,000 a month, they'll find you some money out of the Mideast or China or wherever else they claim they have their money. So we don't call those folks investors. We say investors are people that have a mandate, they tell us what their mandate is, they can prove they've invested in someone before, and they're not providing a service. So we had 1,400 of those meetings yesterday, and we think we had about $4 billion in the building. And one of the couple of slides we have at the end here will show you, like 65 companies in the last couple of years that have come to our Resi conference and raised almost $200 million. And it ranges from like 150 grand all the way up to 20 or 30 million. So, we've created this matching platform, which is global. And as you look at the places we are in, right now we're in San Francisco, and we're heading to Toronto in April. And the investors that hang out with us, and there are probably about 1,000 that are in the rotation. At any time, 250 of them, they kind of use us as a vehicle to go travel and find technology. So up in Canada, there's a lot of healthcare IT. There's drugs and devices as well, but there's a lot of healthcare IT up there. And when we went up to the Mars Incubator, which is a big centrally located government-funded incubator for a lot of companies, and Google and Facebook and J Labs and a whole bunch of other folks are up there. The investors come from all over the world. Yesterday we had, I think, 100 investors from Korea, Japan, and China. And when we were up at Mars, I think we probably had 70 investors, and they're all looking for healthcare IT. And so, if they're following us around, and when we go to Boston, we know what they're looking for as far as technology. When Bio moves around, we kind of put our conference next to Bio, and so we were just in San Diego, and now they're doing Boston, so we're going to go and be in Boston in the summer, and then we're going to be in Boston again in the fall, which is our really big conference that we put on. And then we go to New York City in November. So we have a lot of stuff going on as far as getting the investors, we call them the tribe that hang out with us, that are going to all these different technology pockets around North America to find people like you so they can engage in a dialogue, hopefully create a relationship, and hopefully wind up giving you some money. And then we own an iBank called Boston Innovation Capital. And so we'll typically raise between $10 and $50 million for our Boston Innovation Capital folks. And, it's a certified broker-dealer. You pay us a stipend, we get a success fee. This whole little infrastructure here, to us, is our matching platform. And so that's kind of like who we are and what we're all about. When we're talking about raising capital, the first question is, are you actively raising capital? And I think I saw a show of hands, so that's always good. When someone says they're raising capital, it's kind of like they're committed. Yes, I'm raising capital. But then the question becomes like, how much are you raising? And then you start hemming and hawing and going, well, I'm not really sure. And that's always a dangerous thing to do when you're talking to an investor and you might have maybe 5 or 10 or a minute of the person's time, and you can't tell them how much money you want to raise. So, part of the things that we try and work out and explain to you, in the book and in the dialogue with our sales folks and the other people in our company is, you really got to know what you're doing, and you got to know what you're raising. And if you're only raising $150,000 and you're going to an investor that is a pretty big company, they can't really get a lot of return on 150. They can't get a lot of return on 500,000. They really can't get a lot of return on 5 million. So I always say it's really good to think about what's your best case for the next 3 years, 36 months, and what's your worst case? And your worst case is, I thought I needed 5, but I need 15, because the more money you're raising, the more attractive you are to some investors, because they're giving you money because they want to make some money off of it, and it's hard to make money off of $1 million. the other thing is it takes the same amount of time to raise 150,000 as it does 15 million. When we're talking about time, does anybody want to guess about how long it takes to raise cash? Start to finish, take a guess. 9 months, a year. So we've been doing this for a long time, and if you can do it in 9 months, you're lucky. And some people can do it in 2 weeks, and some people can do it in 6 weeks, and other people, we think it's somewhere between 9 months and 18 months. And so you have to plan on, if it's going to take, 18 months, what do you do and how do you do it? And then how much does it cost? Well, you guys all flew out to San Francisco, and you had to buy the conference tickets, and if you went to a couple of tickets, you probably spent, $4,000 or $5,000, and then you have to go to the hotel. So, here, probably spent somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 just on 1 week. And so if you multiply that times a quarter or once a month, it costs between $60,000 and $90,000. So, the good news and the bad news is there is no good news. The bad news is it costs money to raise money, and you really can't get around that fact. And if you try, it really becomes obvious when you meet certified investors that really know what they're doing, and they take a look at your website, and your brother's friend who did graphic design, threw this crazy website together with a hammock slung between 2 palm trees and a Viking ship, icon or logo, and they just go, these people, what are they doing with their website? And so you have to be really, clear that if it's going to take money and it's going to take time, and it really does take a lot of time, and it's not something you can do part-time, you really have to kind of get yourself in a fundraising mode. And the thing that's funny for scientists, entrepreneurs that are getting themselves in a fundraising mode is that they have to get into a sales mode. And selling is a pure numbers game, and you have to make phone calls and you have to repeat. And we have the story of, like, we called this one person 27 times to meet this person that we knew was a perfect fit, and on the 28th time picked up the phone and apologized and said, I got my schedule up and I'm really sorry, let's get that meeting booked. And how many people in this room would make 28 phone calls to get a meeting with an investor that you're a perfect fit for? And if the answer is, uh-oh, then you really need to think about, like, if you can't make those type of phone calls, who can you get? And if you can get somebody, you can go hire a recent college grad for $20 or $25 an hour, and you get a global target list of investors, and they like to make phone calls. You can get them making the phone calls for you and setting up the meetings. And so when you go there, you're talking your science, and you're talking about your passion, and you're talking about, what you're doing, and you're not sitting around staring at the phone, and the phone is staring back at you, and you're hoping it's going to ring, because it's not. You're going to have to go out there and make the phone calls and get it going. The investor landscape has changed, drastically, and people used to say, okay, I'm going to go get my tech transfer license from my college, and then I'm going to go and get my SBIR funding, and then I'm going to go find some friends and families and some angels, and then I'm going to find a VC, and then hopefully I'll find a farmer or some big partner that will help us out. And that's what it used to be, and that didn't really work too well. And so now what we have, a lot of people have gotten into the early stage. And so you have the ability right now, you can't prescribe the type of investors you can go after and that will invest in you, but you certainly can find out all the ones that are out there that are a fit for you for your stage of development and your product set, and then you can go look at where they are and who they are in the different categories, and then you can reach out and touch them, which is something that we really recommend. So we're going to go over, debunking some of the myths. Your choices are limited to SBIR grants, friends, families, angels, and strategics. So that's the old news. And the new news is that, family offices are out there with money. They might have some kind of affliction in their family, and they're not happy with the pace of the foundations. They're not happy with the state of the illness in their family, and they got money, and they want to go find some crazy scientist entrepreneur that's doing whatever, and it's super early, and nobody wants to invest in it. But if it can save a family member and it's going in the right direction, they're happy to throw some cash your way. And so, same with patient groups, same with foundations. So really understanding, what your solution is to what the indication is, and then understanding who are the people that are interested in it, and then understanding the strata of who they are, and then how you have to go after them. You must limit yourself to regional players. It's a numbers game when you get into sales. And so let's just say that I could pretty much bet anybody in this room, if we did a quick search of my database, I'd find somewhere between 200 and 500 investors. So if you have a small molecule for oncology and malignant breast tumors, I'll probably find 300 or 400 investors around the world that are interested in talking to you. If you don't go around the world and go after these people and you just did like, let's just do the ones in San Francisco and San Diego and Portland and Seattle and Vancouver, let's just stay on the West Coast, you're probably going to get 50. And so if you're going after 50 people in a life and death struggle to get your product forward and move things forward, it's really, really hard to go after 50 people and expect to get one because it's sales. It's really a numbers game. You need lots of people that are a fit because the first 300 turns into 150 and then the next 150 turn into 75 and then 75 turns into 30 and 30 into 15 and eventually somewhere 12, 16, 18 months down the road, you got 3 or 4 people that are really good fit that you've been talking to for a year and a half that could possibly give you money. And so it's those kind of numbers that you have to play with, and it's that kind of attitude that you have. It's got to be a numbers game, and it's not that different from when you're in the laboratory. How many experiments do you have to fail at to get one right? It's the same thing in making phone calls and selling people. How many phone calls do you have to make and how many things you have to do? It's similar, but you have to have that kind of personality and kind of genetic makeup to go after these people and be kind of relentless about it. So average fundraising takes 6 to 9 months. That's what everybody thinks, but it's actually 9 to 18. And a lot of times, I have a really good CEO. He's got $12 million commitment from a big pharmaceutical company in writing, and he needs $5 million. And for the last 6 months, he's been trying to get $5 million to end his round out so he can go on to the clinical trials. And it's just really hard to get people to sign on the dotted line. So he'll get it, but it's something that's taken him a lot of time. And he's really relentless about it. He goes to meetings, several meetings a week, and really pushes hard on making sure that he's going after every rock and turning it over. The thing about understanding each category of investor is, a family office might have different reasons than a corporate venture arm, than a pharmaceutical scout trying to fill his pipeline. And, understanding how profiling of the different categories of investor work can be really important to you, because if you're going after a corporate VC that knows what the pipeline looks like, or a corporate scout that knows what the pipeline looks like, and they're telling you this is the indication we're going for, it's diabetes or whatever, you can really get into a conversation. But if you're going after a family office or somebody that's not deep in the science, you still need to be able to have a conversation with them that's dynamic and mutual and compelling. And so some people you have to dumb it down for, and some people you can get real deep on the science, and you've got to understand what the difference is and how that works. The other thing is understanding how important the science is versus how important the management team is, and what the investors are looking for. I run into a bunch of scientists, and they're in love with their technology, which is great. But if you're somebody giving you money, somebody's writing a check and they're going to give you $5, $10, or $20 million, they want to see who's going to be the good steward of the money that they're handing to you. And so as a result of that, they're going to want to look at the management team. And so when people start up in a company, a lot of times they're just kind of gluing together a management team from the satellite of people that are around them. But thinking about it, you need a CFO, you need a relationships manager, a BD guy, you need a couple of scientists, you need someone that's in charge of the services that's doing all that. So when you form your management team, an investor is going to talk to you, and they're going to be like, great, tell me about your technology. I want to hear it's different. I want to hear what you do and what your value is, and tell me how you fit in a competitive landscape and what you do that's different. But they're all going to say, tell me about your management team and tell me about you, because if it takes 18 months to get funded and then you've got to go through this long relationship, you're really going to get to know each other, and it really is a marriage. And then you've got to start thinking in different ways. Like once they give you the money, and if you're missing a business guy or you're missing a CFO, they're going to put the business guy and CFO in there. So you could be one guy or 2 guys when you started, and all of a sudden you get some money and there's 5 or 6 guys in your company, and 4 of them are from the venture guys that gave you the cash. And so you have to learn to adapt and how to put that whole thing together. So that's really important. When I go to incubators, there's always some, gray-haired, silver-tongued devil that 20 years ago did an exit, and now 20 years later he's in an incubator telling everybody, well, this is how it's done. And one of the things they tell people is, you can't call an investor if you don't have a referral. And those kind of statements really hurt people, because you can call anybody you want, And you don't need a referral, but I will tell you wholeheartedly, if you can get a referral into an investor that's a fit for you by somebody that knows the investor and knows you, you can't do any better than that. But in the meantime, there's probably 300 or 400 investors that are a fit for you that you don't know anybody who knows them, and you have to go after them. So you have to devise a strategy that allows you to go after those people, and the best thing to do is it's based on fit. You know, I got a database from Life Science Nation, and I did a search, and I found you on it, and it looks like you're a perfect fit for my product set, and you're a fit for my stage of development. I'd like to meet you. And so one of the premises of my company, one of the basic theses is that if a investor tells us exactly who they are, what they're looking for, what their criteria of evaluation is, we can write that down, and we have a couple of my researchers here today. You know, they call these investors like every single day, and they find out exactly what they want. And so when a fundraising CEO or scientist entrepreneur goes after one of our investors and say, I'm a life science partner, I read your profile, I'm a fit, it really, really, really helps, because then he's going, I know I'm looking for glioblastoma, or this person said they've got early glioblastoma, and this is, I'll talk to the guy instead of I'm looking for glioblastoma and I got a medical device for feet. So, you know, these are the kind of things that, you know, create white noise and slow us down and don't let us expedite, you know, how we go after getting money. One of the things that we'll just quickly go through here is, you know, you got to get your logo straight. You've got to figure out a logo that's like somewhat compelling, and, you know, it's got to catch your eye. But like right below the logo is the tagline. And so, you know, we have to talk about this concept quickly of, you know, us humans learn really well from telling each other stories. And it's kind of like the best way to learn, and we're kind of like programmed to listen and really get educated from a story. So when you're talking about your technology, it's not a resume, it's not like, you know, a data sheet. It's really, you got to start to form the story. So when people say, you know, we're curing cancer and making the world a better place for their tagline, it doesn't tell, you know, we're reoxygenating, you know, dead cells and, you know, regenerating, you know, whatever, you know, getting right down in like 6 words to exactly what the heck you do. And it's really important to be able to do that. If you can say 6 or 7 words that explain exactly who you are and what your technology does, it really, really helps. And so those 6 words start to turn into the basis of your story. And every single person in this room has their own personal story, and every single one is unique, and every single one is great, and you just have to go in and dig your story, like, you know, how did you even get into science? You do your elevator pitch, and you've got like 5 or 6 sentences, and literally you're in an elevator with someone, you got 30 seconds, who the hell are you, and what the hell you did? And the guy says, you know, we're in the autism spectrum, toggling serotonin receptors that haven't been researched before, and we're finding really compelling results in mice. And it's like, okay, well, that's probably, you know, 100,000 hours of research that we just broke down into a quick paragraph to someone who really understands what the challenge is with autism, such that you can now get the message across to the person that's looking to invest in an autism company and say, I should continue my conversation with this person. So that's really all what it is, and it starts with your tagline, and it goes into your elevator pitch. There's another thing that we need to do here. I call it a tear sheet. And a tear sheet should really be a one-pager that's kind of like the essential data of who you are, what you're doing, what you're trying to raise, what your value add is, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you go into your executive summary is not your resume. Your executive summary is that story that I've been trying to get you guys to start thinking about. What makes you unique? What makes your management team unique? How did you get there? And how can you put it in a concise 2-pager that's going to be compelling, so that when someone reads it, it comes off as your personal story, because they don't want to hear that you were the best in your class and you went to this college and you went to this college, you got your PhD here and here's all the published things. Those are all good, but that doesn't really tell a lot about you, the person. So they want to hear about you, the person, and what makes you different and how you got there and how you did your technology. And that's the executive summary. And then the slide deck, it can't be 120 pages. It's got to be like 10 to 12. And it's got to follow the scenario here. We've got the tagline, the elevator pitch, the 1-page tear sheet that gives all the data, the 2-page executive summary, which is your story, and then you're going into your PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint's going to be 10 or 12 pages, and every time we say that, you know, we will let it go to like 15 or 18 pages, but it drives us crazy. But it's got to be something that's really follows the story and follows the thread, and then it starts to get into technology, why you're different, why your data's looking different, why your molecule for human insulin is going to be different than the one that's out there, it's going to be the thing that changes the marketplace. So how do you tell that story, and how do you get all that stuff straight? And that's in your slide deck. And then your website, well, that's where you can put 1,000 pages, and you can put all the deep stuff that you want. You can do the deepest dive that you want. The first page is going to be, we said, the logo, the tagline, and I have some friends, we did a website for them, and then it was a really great website. We put the founders on the front page and a nice bio about them, because if you're an investor and you're going to give some money to somebody, you don't want to go 3 tabs over and 4 tabs down to see who the hell the CEO and the other guys are. You want to put them right up in front, and like, why are they famous? Nobel laureate, front page. Well, if you got a Nobel laureate on the front page of your website, someone's probably going to click and see who the heck the guy is and what he got the Nobel laureate prize for. So those are some of the things that we find are important. And how do you get your elevator pitch on the front so that they can immediately go? Because an investor, it's going to give you 5 seconds of their time. If you go out and say, hey, I'm a fit for you, I did my research, I know I'm a fit for you, they'll click on a link. And when they click on a link, they'll go to your website and they'll look for 5 seconds. And if you can't draw them in, they will leave, because they'll say, these guys couldn't figure out how to capture my attention. So one of the things we do is we talk to investors, and we interview them. They say, so what are you looking for as soon as you get to a website? So I want a concise idea immediately of what they do. So the last thing you want to do is tell a guy that's an expert in diabetes investment is the size of the diabetes market. Type 1 is this big and type 2 is this big. The guy knows it. So what you think is like, the market's so big because my product's so big, you got to do this. You're wasting the guy's time. You want to tell him, what did you do? What are you doing do you have an artificial pancreas that's smaller than a matchbook? Like, why are you so different? And so you need to be able to get that out and put it on the front. Thank you so much. I'm getting hauled off the stage by Appreciate it.